Okay, so the next question that we have here is basically we have two questions left here, and I think we can of course keep going in these questions. So the question is, a fraction becomes 9 to 11. The fraction, you have a fraction, and this fraction becomes 9 to 11 if 2 is added to both the numerator and the denominator. If 2 is added to both the numerator and denominator. Okay, and then the same fraction becomes 5 to 6 if 3 is added to both the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so now in order to basically do this, basically solve this problem, if you take your fraction as, for example, something like x to y, what you will get is that basically x to y is basically your fraction, of course, and your fraction is, you have some numerator, some denominator. You know that if 2 is added to both the numerator and the denominator, meaning that if you have x plus 2 over y plus 2, your fraction becomes 9 to 11. Okay, it becomes 9 to 11. And it's a good idea to write your ones like this, because sometimes when you can mix them up with other letters or things like that. And then of course sometimes I don't do it, but most of the time I try to do that. And then the same fraction becomes 5 to 6 if 3 is added to both the numerator and the denominator. So x plus 3 over y plus 3 is equal to 5 to 6. Okay, so now you have basically a pair of linear equations in two variables. You can solve them, but before you can do that, you need to do some simplification. So you can cross multiply here. Okay, so 11 times x plus 2 is equal to 9 times y plus 2. Okay, so that's 11x plus 22 is equal to 9y plus 18. And that is 11x minus 9y, and 22 minus 18 is equal to 4 plus 4 is equal to 0. So take this equation number 1, and you can do the same thing here, cross multiply, and you will have 6 times x plus 3 is equal to 5 times y plus 3. Okay, and that is 6x plus 18 is equal to 5y plus 15. And so 6x minus 5y, and then 18 minus 15 is equal to positive 3 is equal to 0. And you can call this equation number 2. So now you have two equations. So one of them is 11x minus 9y plus 4 is equal to 0, and the other one is 6x minus 5y plus 3 is equal to 0. Okay, number 1, number 2, and it's a system, it's a pair of equations in two variables. So now you can basically solve this problem by the method of substitution. By the method of substitution. Okay, so I can take 1 for example and write it as I can express x in terms of y. So 11x is equal to, for example, take these two to the other side of the equation, you'll get 9y minus 4. And so your x is equal to 9y minus 4 over 11. Okay, so that's your x in terms of y. And then basically you can now substitute x in basically x in, meaning this equation over here, you can substitute it in 2. Okay, so then 6 times x, which is 6 times this whole expression here, 6 times 9y minus 4 divided by 11, and then negative 5y plus 3 is equal to 0. So 6 times 9 is equal to 54y minus 6 times 4 is equal to 24, all divided by 11, minus 5y plus 3 is equal to 0. So next you can multiply this whole equation by 11 to get rid of this denominator. So then it would have 54y minus 24, and minus 5 times 11 is equal to 55y, and 3 times 11 is equal to 33 is equal to 0. So then you have negative 55y plus 54y, which is negative y. 33 minus 24 is equal to I hate this kind of calculation. So 33 minus 24 is basically a 2, a 13, so that's a 9. So that's a positive 9 is equal to 0. So your negative y is equal to negative 9, so y is equal to 9. Now that you know the value of y, you can take it and put it in the in any of these equations. For example, this one over here, you can write, for example, equation number 1 over here, 11x minus 9y plus 4 is equal to 0. And then since y is equal to 9, substitute y in this equation, you will get 11x minus 9 times 9 plus 4 is equal to, actually there is no parentheses there, plus 4 is equal to 0, and 11x minus 81 plus 4 is equal to 0, and 11x is equal to, take these to the other side of the equation, 81 minus 4, and 81 minus 4 is equal to 77. 11x is equal to 77, so x is equal to 77 by 11, which is equal to 7. So your x is equal to 7. Okay, so now we said that we had a fraction, and this fraction was in the form of x to y. And when we add it, and now we know that basically it's 7 to 9. Okay, and now we know that if we added 2 to both the numerator and the denominator, the fraction became 9 to 11. So if I take 7 to 9 and add 2 to both the numerator and denominator, I get 9 to 11. Okay, so that's basically one part. And if I add 3 to both the numerator and the denominator, the fraction is supposed to become 5 to 6. So this is 10 to 12, which is the same thing as divide by 2, 5, divide by 2, 6. That's 5 to 6. So that's basically your answer there. And there is another question over here. Okay, so there is another question. So 5 years from now, 5 years from now, the the age of basically, let me write it this way. So John will be 3 times older than his son. So 5 years from now, John will be 3 times older than his son. And then 5 years ago, John was 7 times. John was 7 times as old as his son. Okay. Now you want to find their present age. Their present ages. Okay. So if I take basically John's current age or present age as X, for example, and then John's son's current age as Y. Using these two variables, I can write two equations using the information that I have here. So 5 years from now, John will be 3 times older than, or let me rephrase this, 3 times basically as old as his son. So basically 5 years from now, John's age is going to be so John's age 5 years from now, is basically, if John's current age is X, then his age 5 years from now is going to be X plus 5. And John's son's age 5 years from now is going to be basically Y plus 5. Okay, because his current age is Y. So now 5 years from now, John will be 3 times as old as his son. So John's age X plus 5 is going to be equal to 3 times his son's age, so Y plus 5. Okay, so that is basically one equation. And 5 years ago, so 5 years ago, John's age was 5 years ago, John's age was, if his current age is X, so that was basically X minus 5, and his son's age was Y minus 5. Okay. And then 5 years ago, John's age was 7 times as John's age was 7 times, I've written this wrong, 7 times his son's age. Okay. So 5 years ago, John was 7 times, John's age was, I'm sorry for this mistake. So 5 years ago, John's age was 7 times his son's age. So So John's age 5 years ago, which means x minus 5, was basically 7 times his son's age back then. So 7 times y minus 5. Okay, so now I have these two equations, and I can write this as x plus 5 is equal to 3y plus 15. So that means that x minus 3y and 15 goes to the other side, becomes negative 15 plus 5 is equal to negative 10 is equal to 0. I call this equation number 1. And this equation over here, I can write it as x minus 5 is equal to 7y minus 35. So x minus 7y, and this goes to the other side, becomes positive 35, minus 5 is equal to positive 30, is equal to 0. I call this equation number 2. And so I take these two equations from here, and I need to do a new sheet over here. Okay, so so then the equations that we had were basically x minus 3y minus 10 is equal to 0, equation number 1, and x minus 7y plus 30 is equal to 0, equation number 2. And now you can use the method of substitution in order to solve these two equations. So for example, you can take 1 and find x in terms of y in this equation. So x is equal to 3y plus 10. Okay, and basically then you can substitute x in number 2. You will get 3y plus 10 for x minus 7y plus 30 is equal to 0. So 3y minus 7y is equal to negative 4y, and 30 plus 10 is equal to 40 is equal to 0. So negative 4y is equal to negative 40. So y is equal to negative 40 by negative 4, which is equal to 10. So your y is equal to 10. Okay. Now you can use y in, for example, in any of these equations. So for example, I take 1 and write it as x minus 3 times y, which is equal to 10, minus 10 is equal to 0. Okay. So then x minus 30 minus 10 is equal to 0. And x is equal to 30 plus 10. And x is equal to 40. So this was John's age, John's current age, and this was basically his son's current age. Okay, and the condition that we had there was that 5 years from now, John's age will be 3 times that of his son's age. So 5 years from now, John is going to be 45. His son is going to be 15. So that's 15 times 3 is equal to 45. And basically 5 years ago, so 5 years ago, John was 35 and his son was 5. And 5 times 7 is equal to 35. So John, basically his son's age was 7 times he was 7 times basically John's age. Okay, so that was basically all that we had about the method of, all the exercises that we had about the method of substitution. In the next video, we will do some exercises related to the method of elimination, I suppose. Let me see. We will do some exercises related to elimination. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.